Welcome back to the Best PT Podcast. This is episode 2.18, talking about prosthetics. This is the last episode discussing the musculoskeletal system. We'll start by talking about different types of amputations, upper extremity and lower extremity. Beginning with the upper extremity, we have a forequarter amputation, which is a removal of the upper extremity, including the shoulder girdle. A shoulder disarticulation is the removal of the upper extremity through the shoulder. A transhumeral amputation is removal of the upper extremity proximal to the elbow. An elbow disarticulation is a removal of the lower arm and hand. A transradial amputation is removal of the upper extremity distal to the elbow. A wrist disarticulation is a removal of the hand through the wrist joint. A partial hand amputation is a removal of a portion of the hand and/or digits. So this can be a transcarpal, transmetacarpal, or transphalangeal amputation. And then finally, digit amputation is a removal of a digit. Can be MCP, PIP, or DIP amputation. Moving down to the lower extremity, we have a hemicorpectomy, which is a removal of the pelvis and both lower extremities. A hemipelvectomy is a removal of half the pelvis and one lower extremity. A hip disarticulation is a removal of the lower extremity from the pelvis and below. A transfemoral amputation is a removal of the lower extremity above the knee. A knee disarticulation is a removal of the lower extremity through the knee joint line. A transtibial amputation is a removal of the lower extremity below the knee. Symes amputation is a removal of the foot at the ankle, including the removal of both malleoli. Chopart's amputation is a disarticulation at the mid-tarsal joint. And a transmetatarsal amputation is a removal of the midsection of the metatarsal joints. Moving on to talk about prosthetics. For the upper extremity, we have a transradial prosthetic. A standard socket covers 2/3 of the forearm, which can be shortened to allow for increased supination and pronation range of motion. Supracondylar sockets are self-suspending in nature. Suspension can include a triceps cuff, harness, or cable system. The elbow unit attaches to the tricep cuff or an upper arm pad. A flexible or rigid hinge is available to connect the socket to a proximal component. The wrist unit can be a quick change unit, wrist flexion unit, ball and socket unit, or constant friction unit. And then the terminal device, so the prosthetic hand, can be a voluntary open and close unit. A body-powered, externally powered, myoelectric or hybrid-powered unit, a hook, a mechanical hand, or a cosmetic glove. Transhumeral prosthetics. Standard socket extends to the acromion process. A modified socket allows for more rotation range of motion. Lightweight friction units can be used with passive prostheses. Suspension includes a harness, cable, or suction unit. Elbow unit, internal or external locking unit. Wrist unit, quick change, wrist flexion, ball and socket, or constant friction unit. And then again, the terminal device can be a voluntary open and close unit, a body-powered, externally powered, myoelectric, or hybrid-powered unit, a hook, a mechanical hand, or cosmetic glove. Two different types of lower extremity prosthetics. Transfemoral. The socket can be quadrilateral or an ischial containment socket. Suspension can use complete or partial suction, a Silesian bandage, or a pelvic belt or band. The knee can be a single or polycentric axis knee. The friction mechanism can be constant, variable, sliding, hydraulic, or pneumatic. The shank can be a rigid exterior exoskeleton or a pylon foam endoskeleton. The foot can be a solid ankle cushion heel, a sack, a stationary attachment, flexible endoskeleton, or SAFE, a single-axis foot, or a multi-axis foot. And a multi-axis foot in this reference is one of those blade prosthetics you may see Olympians wear. Transtibial prosthetic. The socket can be a patella tendon weight-bearing socket, a supracondylar patellar tendon socket, or a supracondylar suprapatellar socket. Suspension can be a supracondylar cuff, thigh corset, supracondylar brim, rubber sleeve or waist belt. No friction mechanism or knee joint shank is needed because in a transtibial amputation, the knee joint is still intact. The shank can again be a rigid exterior exoskeleton or pylon foam endoskeleton, and again, the foot attachments can be a solid ankle cushion heel, SAC, stationary attachment flexible endoskeleton, SAFE, single axis foot or multi-axis foot or blade. And then the last part of this episode, dealing with post-amputation, post-operative dressings. We have rigid, semi-rigid, and soft dressings. So rigid or plaster of Paris dressings. The advantage to these, they allow early ambulation, they promote circulation and healing, they stimulate proprioception, they protect and support soft tissues, and they limit edema. Disadvantages are that immediate wound inspection is not possible, they cannot be changed daily, and they require application by a professional. Semi-rigid, known as Una paste or an air splint. Advantages: reduction of edema, soft tissue support, allows for early ambulation, easily changeable. Disadvantages: these do not protect as much as a rigid dressing, they require more changing than a rigid dressing, and they can loosen and allow for an increase in edema. And finally, soft dressings, such as ACE wrap or shrinkers. Advantages include reduction in post-op edema, provides some protection, inexpensive, easily removed for wound inspection, and allows for active joint range of motion. Disadvantages include that tissue healing is interrupted due to frequent dressing changes. Joint range of motion can also delay healing. There's an increased risk of contracture, less control of pain, and you cannot control the tension of soft dressings, especially if self-applied by the patient, so there is the risk of the tourniquet effect. That's it for this episode, talking about prosthetics. This is the last episode in the musculoskeletal system. The next episode will be episode 3.1 of the neuromuscular system, talking about central nervous system neuroanatomy. As always, the outline will be in the show notes. Thank you for joining me.